What do you think is wrong with the church in North America? Oh my goodness, what a question that was when it came in. Let's see, where do we want to start with this? Well, number one, what is wrong with the church in North America is it's filled with human beings. It's populated by flawed human beings. And as opposed to seeing that as something wrong, I think we need to embrace that in the sense of we're all growing together. Now, with that in mind, starting out from, we're here for each other. We're here to be a blessing to each other. We're here to be an encouragement to each other. We're here to lift each other up. We're here to love one another. We're here to love one another into the fullness of our giftings. I think one of the things we need to make sure we're not doing is looking for faults. Now, this is a fine line because we want to be there for people who are wrestling with things or overcoming things, yet we don't want to be fault finders. We don't want to be negative Neds where we're always policing the body and looking for what's wrong. We want to be encouragement. We want to be a blessing. We want to call people up higher. We want to come alongside of them. I always think of Jesus in John, is it 1 or 2? I think it's John 1, at the end of John 1, when he meets Nathanael. Andrew goes to Nathanael and says, I have met the Messiah. I know the Messiah. You have to come and see the Messiah. I've got to introduce you to him. He's Jesus from Nazareth. And Nathanael goes, Nazareth? What good can come from Nazareth? He has a real attitude problem. He's very negative, very fault-finding. And when he approaches Jesus, Jesus says, now here's an Israelite with no guile. I like this guy. He lets you know exactly what's on his mind, exactly what he's thinking. Jesus sees the positive in it, and then he ministers to him and loves him and encourages him and brings him up higher. He doesn't leave him where he is. He doesn't excuse where he is, but he doesn't malign him for where he is. He comes alongside of him. I think that's one of the things we could grow in North America, is connecting more with the character and nature of God when we call people to a higher standard, but we don't do it from fault finding, we do it from encouragement. Some other things that I was thinking about, I think one of the challenges for the church in North America is I think too easily we are an either or church. And I always look at the victorious risen Lord in the book of Revelation, and when he's releasing John to bring the corrective words to the 7 churches in Asia, he didn't do it when John was a son of thunder, when John was a fault finder and a thunder bringer, like in Luke 9. He did it when John had gone through a process of maturation, and now he was the apostle of love. And in love, he could bring a word of correction because he was bringing word for the church, not against the church. He was bringing words to bring the church up higher, not to be negative. Now, what does when the victorious risen Lord is doing this for John and through John for the church, we see the sword that comes out of his mouth. It's a two-edged sword. And I think one of the challenges in North America is we tend to wield one edge or the other. And you've heard me talk about this before. We tend to wield the edge of truth as opposed to the not truth and love. We'll wield truth or love. That's how I want to say that. We'll either wield truth and beat people over the head with the truth, beat people up with the truth, use the truth as a fault-finding tool, or we'll wield love without truth, and we'll absolutely engage with God's heart for people, but we'll say things like, God loves you, so it's all okay. God loves you, so sin doesn't matter. An either or approach is not going to bring life, is not going to bring revival, is not going to bring reformation, is not going to bring life. It's wielding both edges together, bringing truth in love, bringing truth into a person's life for the person, not against the person, bringing love into someone's life so they feel safe to be called up higher, and they feel safe in a safe environment to deal with the issues of sin in their life. So I think that's one big thing that will help the North American church. The other thing that ties into this is I don't think the North American church has the revelation of the power of unity that would bless us. I think the thing that has kept, I had an encounter years ago with an angel where the Lord sent me an angel, and through that angel he spoke to me of how to see revival in the churches turn into reformation in the nations. He gave me 2 keys, and one of the keys was unity. And in this encounter, the Lord asked me, do you want to hear my definition of unity? And you've probably heard me tell this story. It happened years ago. I tell it frequently because I've carried a message on unity for years because of the power of togetherness and the power of unity. And I remember thinking, well, Lord, you've given me a pretty fine mind. I understand words pretty well. I think I know what the definition of unity is. But then he declared, I knew that I needed to know what his definition was, and this was his definition. Unity is agreeing that I am Lord and knowing that I am Lord being more than enough common ground for any of my children to meet upon. And in that, I know that he was simply saying, agreeing that I am Lord is more unifying than any theological topic you might disagree on. And unity is what will bring not only revival, but will allow revival in and through the churches to become reformation of the nations. And you know, we see this in Psalm 133. We see it in John 17. We see that when there is unity in the church, that all of a sudden there's a progression. One sets 1,000 to flight, but 2, 10,000. There's this progression inside the power of together, inside of unity. And one of the things we need to learn to do and grow up a little bit in the North American church is we need to discover how to disagree without dividing and dishonoring. And I've talked about this a lot in the last couple years, so there's different shows you can go back and watch. But I think that's one of the areas that we as individual believers can start taking personal responsibility for. And as we do, I think we're going to see the North American church grow up in power, in love, in truth, in mercy, in grace, in revival, in reformation, and become the dominion stewards in the earth that we are called to be and meant to be. So there's a simple answer of some of the things and areas I think as a North American church, we as individuals can take responsibility for. I think we've allowed the accuser of the brethren to run rampant in the North American church, and each of us as believers can take responsibility for that individually and become a voice of truth and love, not a voice of accusation and attack. But that would be my simple answer, sort of an overview of areas that we can grow in the North American church to become even more of who God has called us to be as believers, as the sons of God, as the bride of Christ, as dominion stewards in the earth, as difference makers and solution bringers, and how we can see more unity in the church, and from that unity see an increase of kingdom impact through the church.